the burning heart of the East, a city rose as a challenge to the heavens. Massive columns, walls that touched the sky, and towers covered in gold declared to the world, "The glory of man is eternal." Babylon, the jewel of Mesopotamia, reigned over peoples and tongues, ruling with iron and allure. Its throne was not merely a symbol of power, it was an altar to human ego. And upon it, seated in splendor, was Nebuchadnezzar, the King of Kings, whose name made rulers tremble and multitudes bow. But behind the bronze gates and lavish banquets, something deeper was stirring. An invisible God watched. A captive people prayed. And dreams began to disturb the sleep of the one who thought himself invincible. First a statue, then a furnace, and finally a great tree. Signs that cut through pride like a sharpened blade. This is not merely the story of an empire. It is the account of a man who saw himself as a god, but discovered he was dust. For the Most High still reigns, and his decrees cannot be resisted. The sun rose like a blazing disk over the plains of Chaldea, staining the walls of Babylon red. The city breathed power. Thousands of bricks sealed with the king's name formed the foundations of temples, palaces, and towers. Every stone declared to the world Nebuchadnezzar was here, and he did not pass in silence. His armies had crushed nations from Egypt to distant Jerusalem, whose house of God had been plundered, and the sacred vessels now adorned the temple of Marduk. For the king, a single gesture was enough, and foreign rulers bowed their knees. Inside the Ishtar gates, crowds pressed together to witness the royal procession. Adorned horses, fluttering banners, priests chanting hymns. And in the center, upon a war chariot carved with scenes of conquest, Nebuchadnezzar gazed upon his dominion. His eyes were cold, calculating, filled with conviction.
The world is in my hands. Not even the gods can resist me.
But in the shadows of the palace corridors, 4 young Hebrews watched in silence. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, sons of Judah, captives in a foreign land. Their garments had changed, their names had been replaced, but their eyes still sought the heavens. That night, the king's peace was shattered. He awoke covered in sweat, gasping for air, sheets tangled. He had seen something, but the memory slipped away. A colossal form, an overwhelming presence, an abrupt end like dust in the wind. Rising from his bed, he cried out,
"Guards, bring me the wise men, all of them, now."
The court erupted in confusion. Magicians, enchanters, and astrologers rushed in. Bowing before the throne, one spoke.
"O king, live forever. Tell us the dream and we will give the interpretation."
But Nebuchadnezzar rose, his eyes burning with fury.
"No, tell me the dream and its interpretation. If you cannot, you will all die."
Silence fell like a cloak of lead. The men looked at one another, lips trembling. No one dared to speak a lie. When no answer came, the guards departed with orders of execution, and among the condemned was Daniel. When Daniel learned of the decree, he did not flee, murmur, or bargain. Instead, he turned to his friends and said firmly,
"Let us pray to the God of heaven. Only he knows the secrets beyond human reach."
That very night, while the city slept and the wise men feared the dawn, Daniel received the revelation in dreams and visions. His eyes opened as if heaven itself had spoken. At daybreak, he was brought before the king. The throne's columns gleamed, and the guards kept their hands on their swords. Nebuchadnezzar stared at him coldly.
So it is you who can reveal the dream I had, and what it means.
Daniel, with a steady and humble voice, replied,
"It is not I, O king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries."
And it was in that moment that the stone began to roll. The royal hall fell silent. Every eye was on the young Hebrew, who spoke without trembling before the most powerful man on earth. Daniel continued, his voice sounding like wind among marble columns.
"In your dream, O king, you saw a vast statue, terrible in appearance. The head was of pure gold, the chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet partly of iron and partly of clay."
Nebuchadnezzar's eyes widened.
As you watched, a stone cut out without human hands struck the feet of the statue and shattered them. Then the entire image was reduced to dust, like chaff in the wind, and the stone became a mountain that filled the whole earth.
The king suddenly rose, his steps echoing.
That's it. That's exactly it.
The prophet's words had touched the core of the royal nightmare. Daniel then declared solemnly,
"You, O king, are the head of gold. God has given you dominion and glory, but after you will come other kingdoms, until the Most High establishes a kingdom that shall never be destroyed."
Nebuchadnezzar fell with his face to the ground. His mind boiled. The vision of future glory brought him no joy. The thought of losing his throne haunted him. Even though he had acknowledged divine greatness, a poisoned seed was germinating in his heart.
I am the head of gold, but why be a part if I can be the whole?
And thus, in the secrecy of his pride, a plan was born. On the vast plain of Dura, where the horizon met the sky, he commanded that a statue made entirely of pure gold be raised. Not silver, not clay, gold from head to toe. A monument to his glory, to his eternal dominion. Hammers thundered, ropes snapped, and the sun reflected on the golden surface like a second star among men. Days and nights of labor echoed with the shouts of workers, while the dust of pride mingled with the gold that covered every inch of that image. On the day of inauguration, peoples, tongues, and nations gathered. Drums resounded, trumpets burst with sounds of conquest. A herald cried out,
O peoples, when you hear the music, fall down and worship the image the king has set up. Whoever does not bow shall be thrown into the fiery furnace.
The crowd fell like a wave before the statue, all except three. Standing firm like columns against idolatry, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah remained upright. Their eyes did not look to the statue. They looked above it to an invisible throne. On that golden plain, three men standing in faith became mountains before the idolatry of an empire. Nervous, soldiers dragged them before the king. Nebuchadnezzar shouted,
Is it true that you refuse my command? I give you one more chance. When the music sounds, bow down. Otherwise, you will be burned alive. And what God could deliver you from my hand?
Then Hananiah spoke.
O king, if our God wills, he will deliver us. But if not, know that we will not bow.
The furnace roared, and with it the king's pride was also ignited, and an invisible war had begun, not against men, but against heaven itself. The fire roared like an army of starving beasts. The heat made the ground tremble, and the flames seemed to reach the very heavens. Nebuchadnezzar watched from the height of his portable throne, his face overtaken by a fury on the edge of madness.
Increase the fire 7 times more.
Guards moved in desperation, feeding the furnace with wood and perfumed oils. The air became unbreathable, and the sound of the flames echoed like thunder within caverns. And the king roared,
Bind them and throw them in now.
The soldiers, overwhelmed by the heat, barely managed to approach before falling dead, consumed by the very fire they had kindled. But the 3 young men were hurled inside, and a collective cry swept across the plain. The people covered their faces, and even the magicians turned their eyes away. The king leaned forward to see better, sweat dripping down his chin, his heart pounding with fury and disbelief. The stone columns reflected the blaze of the fire, as if heaven and hell had collided at that very moment. Then the impossible happened. He jumped to his feet, pointing with a trembling hand.
Did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire?
The captain stammered.
Yes, O king.
Nebuchadnezzar stepped back, his eyes wide as if seeing a ghost.
But I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the midst of the flames, unharmed. And the 4th has the appearance of a son of the gods.
Silence fell over the crowd. The fire that was meant to consume had become a light of revelation. Inside the flames, the figures moved serenely, divine radiance surrounding their bodies. It was as though heaven itself had descended into the furnace. Nebuchadnezzar placed his hand upon his chest, his pride shattering under the weight of the unseen.
Servants of the Most High God, come out and come here.
And the 3 young men emerged from the flames. Their clothes were not burned, their hair untouched, not even the smell of smoke clung to them. The people fell to their knees. Nebuchadnezzar, without his crown, approached with slow steps. His voice, for the first time, sounded like that of a broken man.
Blessed be their God who sent his angel and delivered his servants. There is no other God who can save in this way.
But within the king's heart, the conflict did not cease. Even as he bowed before divine power, he feared losing the glory that made him breathe. That night, while the people slept, the king wandered alone through the palace halls, his hands brushing the cold walls, the echo of drums still resounding in his mind. The fire had ceased on the outside, but inside the battle burned even stronger.
If this God rules over all, why does he allow me to reign? Why does he show me his power, yet not take the scepter from my hand?
The night wind passed through the marble columns, carrying the king's whisper away. The flames had died, but a new fire burned. The fire of pride that refuses to die. And it was there, in the stillness of a restless heart, that the Most High chose to speak again. In the stillness of the night, while the city rested beneath veils of incense and silence, the king was seized by a vision that seemed to tear his soul apart. He saw a gigantic tree whose branches reached the heavens and whose roots embraced the ends of the earth. Its crown was a shelter for the birds. Its trunk supported the beasts of the field. Its fruits fed multitudes. It was an image of abundance and dominion, a living representation of human glory, elevated to the extreme. But as Nebuchadnezzar beheld it, a heavenly voice tore through the skies with a sound that was not only heard, but felt in the very depths.
Cut down the tree, fell it, but leave the stump with its roots, bound with iron and bronze, until 7 times pass over it.
The king awoke with his body in fever and his spirit in panic. His eyes sought support in the marble columns, but the ground seemed to spin beneath his feet.
Call Daniel,
he cried, and his voice echoed like a discordant thunder through the corridors. And the prophet was brought in, his face serene, as if he already knew. Nebuchadnezzar recounted every detail of the dream, every symbol, every hidden fear in his voice. When he finished, he waited, like a defendant before the judge. Daniel lowered his eyes, and for a moment the silence weighed like a judgment.
O king, if only this dream referred to your enemies. But the tree is you. Your dominion has reached the heavens. Your glory has covered the earth. Yet you have been found in pride. You shall be driven from among men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you, until you acknowledge that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men, and gives them to whom he wills.
The throne trembled. The words echoed through the columns like invisible hammers. The king did not answer. He only rose, walked to the terrace, and looked upon the city he had built with the blood of nations. The towers gleamed like flames. The squares teemed with life. And yet none of it truly belonged to him. Daniel approached and, in a gentle voice, murmured,
Accept my counsel, O king. Practice righteousness. Show mercy to the poor. Perhaps you may prolong your peace.
But pride, though wounded, still breathed. And for 12 months Babylon continued in apparent normality. The parades returned, the banquets resumed, and the people began to forget the warning. But in the king's heart, the silent battle continued. The echoes of the dream still spoke to him, but were drowned by the flattery of princes, the scent of incense, and the sound of his own voice. Every applause from the people was another drop in the chalice of self-glorification. Then one day, at dusk, the king ascended to the terrace. The sun gilded the walls, and the rivers shone like silver serpents. The wind blew over the palms of the hanging gardens, yet there was no relief in the king's chest. Nebuchadnezzar opened his arms and proclaimed with a resounding voice,
Is not this the great Babylon that I have built by the might of my power and for the glory of my majesty?
And before the last syllable fell to the ground, a voice descended from heaven.
O Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom has departed from you. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, until you know that the Most High rules.
A thunderclap resounded. The king staggered. His eyes lost their reason. His mouth, once full of decrees, uttered only a growl. And in that instant, the tree was cut down. Nebuchadnezzar was humbled. He who once commanded legions now walked on all fours across the damp fields. His beard, once well groomed with fine oils, had become thick and wild. His hair grew like straw in the wind. His nails curved like the talons of a bird of prey. The nobles who had once surrounded him in flattery now watched from afar, in silence and fear. No one dared betray or replace the king, for all knew the God of heaven had not yet finished his work. Nebuchadnezzar wandered among the bushes like a drifting shadow. His eyes, once blazing with sovereignty, now wandered without focus, reflecting both sky and mud, creation and ruin. When the night fell, he howled like a beast. When the sun rose, he crawled among herbs and roots, his body drenched with the dew of the night. And so the days became months, and the months became years. The peasants whispered when they saw him. The shepherds pointed and murmured,
It is he, the conqueror of Jerusalem, the Lord of 1,000 cities.
In the city, the throne remained untouched. Daniel, silent, watched from afar. The 3 young men from the furnace prayed in secret. The people waited, for even in his mental exile, the king was still God's possession. He was not a madman. He was a man under divine discipline. Babylon could forget, but heaven does not forget. And the promise of the Most High was still alive. Then, on a serene morning when the sky seemed clearer than usual, the miracle whispered through the winds. Nebuchadnezzar, covered in earth, stopped at the foot of a hill. His weary body stood still, his eyes lifted toward the heavens. There was no altar, no trumpets, no crowd. But there, among the crickets and the silence, something broke within him. The last grain of pride, and with a hoarse voice he murmured,
The heavens rule, not I.
In that instant the darkness that surrounded him retreated like mist before the light. His reason returned like a river breaking its dams. His body trembled, his hands touched his face. He knew he was a man again. He wept, not from pain, but from repentance. His tears mingled with the dust, and for the first time, the king did not feel like a king, only a servant. And the servant was freer than he had ever been upon his throne. The news spread like fire through the fields. The guards ran, the nobles gathered. Daniel was the first to recognize him.
The time is fulfilled. The stump was not uprooted, only pruned. Now it shall bloom again.
Nebuchadnezzar was bathed, clothed, and anointed. When he entered the throne hall, he was no longer the same man. The crowd fell silent, and he, with a steady voice, declared,
I, Nebuchadnezzar, bless the God of heaven, for his sovereignty is eternal, and his truth no one can hinder.
And then the throne was restored, but this time, not by strength, but by grace. The heavens still rule. That truth echoes through the ages. There is still time to listen, to surrender, to be restored. And if this story touched your heart, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment. Which part of Nebuchadnezzar's journey spoke to you the most? I will read each one. Finally, share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that the glory of men is temporary, but the kingdom of God is eternal. Until the next video, and may God bless you.